You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to True Wealth. I'm Dave Basconi, and here with me is Maria Smith. Hello, Maria. How are you today?
Hi, Dave. I'm doing well. I love the fall weather. It's very crisp. It's quite cool in the morning now, but it's going to get warmer as the week goes on. This weather is just beautiful, perfect for being outdoors.
It is. Of course, you're talking about being outdoors in the sun. I've been outdoors late at night, between around 11 o'clock at night, in those 40-degree temps, with me still wearing summer clothes.
Oh, yes. I'm talking
about
about the sunshine. Absolutely. I'm talking about being in the sun, or even during the midday, you can be in the shade, but the sun is really where you want to be. And like in the summer, you don't want to be in the sun. It's too hot, basically for most people. But right now, being in the sun is just delightful. But at nighttime, like you were saying, at 11 o'clock, 40 degrees, it's quite nippy.
You should throw on a little heavier clothes, but that's my fault, not anyone else's. Hey, I need a favor from you. I ran across a horse joke, and when I read it, I thought it was funny. I told it to my wife yesterday. She thought it was a dud. So I'm going to read the joke to you, and
you're going to try me as a guinea pig, okay?
No. You're the tiebreaker. You need to be honest.
Yeah, that makes it worse.
Okay, you're going to be the tiebreaker.
I'll do my best.
Okay. Here, it's a short one. Here's how it goes. A horse sits down in a movie theater, and the woman next to him asks, "Excuse me, are you a horse?" "Why, yes, I am," replies the horse. "What are you doing at this movie?" The horse says, "I really liked the book."
Okay. Okay.
I can tell I didn't hear that.
That stretches the imagination. Sitting at a movie theater is already stretching it. But to actually read, I think that's stretching it too much. I think a horse can watch a movie, but to actually read is a little bit beyond.
See, okay, you're with my wife. I get it. I'm talking to the wrong audience.
Maybe it's a man joke.
I think it's a horse person joke because this came from another horse person.
All right. Yes. Yes. It must be a horse person. Yes. Because horse people think horses are very, very, very intelligent and almost human.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they could see this. I mean, they become your best friends. So it's a different relationship. Because I think there's another horse joke, and I think I've told this one, but I might as well, since we're into this, I'll tell this one, and you'll probably feel the same way. I think this is hilarious, but it goes like this. A horse goes into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender brings it over and says, "Hey, buddy, why the long face?"
Okay, that one I get a little bit better.
Okay, that one's a better. Okay.
Well, because I expect a horse to have a long face. It's really hard to think that a horse is going to read a book. You can take the horse to the movies, but you can't make him read. Okay. Well, now I'm beginning to understand where my wife's coming from. She's probably thinking more in your terms than in mine. So, okay, well, that settles it. I appreciate your honesty, and as more horse jokes come along, I'll pass them along. And good.
I'm not.
Good.
I'm not upset. Like I said, there's some others out there, but for another time. So, Maria, before the show we were talking, and you were saying it's the feast day of St. Matthew. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's September 21st, the feast day of St. Matthew. It's writer of one of the Gospels, actually the first one, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and he was a tax collector. And that really ties in with what you suggested we speak about, which is yesterday's Gospel reading about the laborers in the vineyard. St. Matthew was a tax collector, and then he was called to become a workman in our Lord's vineyard, and he's one of the best, one of the greatest.
Yes, and tax collectors were despised in their time. I think it was in a homily, someone explained it. It says that I guess it was the Romans that used them to go amongst the Jews and collect a tax. So the Romans were owed a certain amount, and the tax collector could tack on a little bit more for his profit, for his payment. But apparently the corrupt ones added way too much. In other words, what they paid to Rome in the form of the tax and what they kept for themselves was basically stealing from the owner, the property owner. Is that your understanding of why the tax collectors were despised in those days?
Yes, I think that's definitely a huge part of it, probably the main part, but they were also despised because they were seen as traitors going from the Jews to become one of the Romans, one of the despised ones. They're oppressors.
Yeah, and I can. Well, I tell you, things don't change as long as there's been people on Earth and civilization of sorts. There's always been some kind of corruption and some kind of evil. But for him to be chosen to be a disciple, I think Jesus took a lot of flack on that one. Because you read that a lot of people were very critical of his choice of Matthew, but yet once again it just shows what can happen, a complete conversion of going from being an evil one to one of the apostles. It's just amazing when you think what can happen when God gets involved.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you said some kind of corruption and evil, and it seems like you said, that this has been going on all throughout human history, that there is the oppressor and the oppressed. It doesn't seem to ever end that there's one group that is being oppressed and another group that is oppressing. And a thought came to me that is so much human nature. It really is. We really, we can't look at ourselves and say, oh, how are those people being so cruel, so harsh, so mean? It really is part of each one of us. If we start to feel a little like, oh, wow, this power, I have a little bit of power. Oh, a little bit more now. Oh, this power feels really good. We can become oppressors, or we can allow ourselves to become oppressed in many, many different ways. I mean, even like what's going on in our country right now in the United States of America with all the rioting and stuff, we can allow ourselves to become oppressors or oppressed. And neither one is good. We tend to see, and I am this way myself, I tend to see the ones who are oppressed as the ones more worthy of honor, of care, of compassion. But you know what? And some people actually would think that the oppressor is the one who's more worthy of honor because they're strong, they're mighty, they're conquerors, they're victors. They're the ones who are worthy of admiration. So either one is wrong. Neither the oppressor nor the oppressed should be getting admiration. The oppressors should not be oppressing, but the oppressed people should not be allowing themselves to be oppressed. And we see how it happens. It happens little by little. It happens, okay, this is one way that I have noticed, and there could be other ways, but the oppressed people allow themselves to be oppressed under the guise and or fear of being taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, they dropped their guard. I think that's happened many times throughout history. If you read about it, I think the Nazis in Germany were able to gain control because it was a time, it was a struggle. And I've also read that if you can take care of people's hunger and their fear, if those are two very strong emotions, hunger and fear, and that's what the Nazi Party did. They promised to feed them and bring about a sort of, I guess, prosperity or peace, or make their fears go away. And in doing so, the people allowed themselves to be taken over. And I think that happens all the time. And I think it's a recipe that is over time and throughout history has shown to work. And the people who want to gain control, they know it. It's just a matter of how to apply it, when and where, under what circumstances. But the oppressed may be a little bit, some of it's their fault because they're not paying attention to history. They're not paying attention to the things that would allow them to escape that. It's like someone who blindly just goes out without, reading a map or considering where they're going, what they're going to need, and then they get themselves in trouble. They get lost, and they go, well, I need help. Well, maybe the first help you needed was yourself. You should have thought this thing through, and now look where you are. So that, I think, goes back to your point of both are at fault if one wants control wrongly, but the other one just simply became too comfortable, did not remain vigilant, despite the fact that this has happened many times in the past.
Yes, exactly. I agree totally with what you said. Yes, they become too comfortable. They become lazy. You said, they drop their guard. And you said two things, which I think is quite accurate. I think you hit it right on the nail, right on the head there. Hunger and fear. And hunger, I would say, is not just for food, but it's also for entertainment or meaning or any kind of, we're hungry. And it can also be a greediness. You can have as much food as you need, but you want more or whatever it is. So it can be anything material, food for your body or clothes. It could be you want more of the material. You're hungry. You're greedy for it. And this made me think of in our Lord's time and before and after in the Roman Empire, they had what was known as bread and circuses. That's how they came. That's how they kept their populace, their peoples, in a way, dulled, drugged with bread and circuses. Here, we'll give you all this and this and this, and then we're going to do exactly as we want.
Yeah, what was it? Did you say bread and?
Bread, because they gave them food and circuses. They gave them something to eat, and then they gave them something to entertain and distract them. The circus, the entertainment. And boy, oh boy, do we have circuses galore now at the touch of a fingertip with a smartphone or a computer. We have distraction. We have all kinds of circuses going on.
Yeah, well, that's the Colosseum. That was my understanding, that the Colosseum was used. I guess it was, and I'm not a historian. These are bits and pieces I read. It didn't really cost anything to get in, so you could keep the masses, like you said, entertained. And
distracted, so they didn't know. Distracted, so they don't know what's going on. They can't think for themselves, which is the complaint that I hear so often now. People are not thinking. They're following blindly anybody who is able to have some charisma and lead them even down very, very wrong paths.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, once again, that recipe is as old as probably way before, Christ. It's probably been practiced. And it's amazing how well it works, because it's not like people can't learn about the past. We certainly all can. I had history, and when I was in school, I don't know what it's like now. I've heard it's been changed a little bit, but I had American history, world history, and all of that. And I would recall, I was more into the math and science part, but I do recall hearing about the civilizations and the collapse of the empires, and how one rose to power. And speaking of that, my understanding is that Rome, which pretty much ruled most of the world at one point, the empire stretched forever, but they got lazy. They had too many holidays in this attempt to always satisfy the citizens with these circuses and entertainment. They had way too many holidays. The people that were captured were forced in their armies. However, these people did not fight like the native Roman because they were basically oppressed. They lost everything, and now you think they're going to fight for Rome the way a Roman soldier would fight? And so Rome got fat and sloppy and lazy, and they lost their empire over it. And, I mean, it's not the first time, and certainly wasn't the last time, but how many times do people have to read about it, if they choose to read about it, to figure this out?
Yeah, it's not just really reading about it. It's really more understanding it, and it's really more internalizing it. It's using your common sense. It's, common sense, it takes an effort. It's a labor. It's work. Common sense means you actually have to think about what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, what's good and what's better. You have to think of these things, and thinking requires effort. Now, tell me, Dave, when somebody's had a really hard day at work, do they want to come home and work hard, even on something they actually enjoy, for 2 or 3 hours? More likely, the answer is no. They want to come home and just relax and not think of anything, which is fine. We're not made to think 24 hours. No human being has that kind of energy whatsoever. But we are supposed to think about what's important. If we're spending 8 hours of our day thinking about how to make more money, or how to outsmart somebody else, or whatever that or how to, retire early, and if we're thinking of all these things instead of just doing our job and then spending our leisure time with the most important things, which is, what is my life all about? How am I living what I believe is the best? All these really important questions that people don't want to tackle because it requires too much work, too much effort. They don't want to put it in there. It's enough for them to work their 8 hours, make their money, and then they want to think about how to make more money and how to spend it.
Yeah, I do see that, and you are right. I don't know what people did before television. I'm sure
the taverns, right? The taverns.
Yeah, exactly.
And gossiping, or being busybodies and nosy people for women, probably.
Yeah, but it's right now easy to come home and turn on the TV and catch the news or some show that you just like to veg out in front of. It's easy to distract yourself rather than maybe find a quiet place, a comfortable chair in a quiet place, and relax. You've earned it. You got up early. You worked all day. But now you're in a place where, as you relax, your mind relaxes and opens up. And that's when the real thinking happens. That was always my argument for coming down to the barn. Yeah, the barn is full of chores, and you got to muck stalls. But guess what? It didn't take long that once you were in this environment that you had a clear mind. And that's when, that's when you could really think. Whereas going the other route, where you sit down with friends, let's say you go to a bar, sit down with friends while you're chatting and talking about sports and all the other stuff, or you sit down in front of a TV show, that's got your attention. your mind never really relaxes. You may feel more relaxed, but your mind is always occupied. It is never emptied so that you can really start to think about some of these other things that are so important.
Yeah, you said it. Absolutely. You see, when you've had a busy day, and to whomever is listening, when you've had a very tough day at work, whether you're home now because of the lockdowns and all the different restrictions, when you've worked a long day, the best thing to do is to relax with no TV, no news, no newspaper, no radio, to relax with nature. And you know what? You can go outside. Right now we have beautiful weather. If you can't go outside, sit in front of a window. That's still beautiful. You see the clouds, you see the sky. And if it's dark and you can't see anything out, sit in front of a beautiful painting. You can definitely go the religious route and, have a beautiful religious painting or statue, the crucifix, all these things. But nature itself will bring you to a point of relax where you can actually start thinking straight. Nobody can think straight when they are overwhelmed, when they are tense, when they are stressed out. Nobody can. You need to relax to make some important decisions, no matter what they are, and especially about what's important in life. That's an important decision because each and every person, has to decide for themselves what is most important to me. And you live your life based on that decision. It's an extremely important decision that needs to be revisited very often, sometimes on a daily basis, weekly, monthly. You know how you have those meetings at work, the weekly, the monthly, the daily, the annual, the quarterly review, the annual review. All these things should definitely be going into your very own life, into who you are, how you are living. Are you living consistent with your beliefs? And if not, how to do that?
Yeah. And, as you were talking about, the means to use to relax when you get home, I brought up something that happened to me many years ago. I don't know, have you ever participated in a community garden? It's where the town provides plots for, cheap, like $20 for the whole season, in case you don't have enough room at your place or you don't have the open space for the sun to grow a garden. So I did a community garden one year, I think, and I kind of liked it. And so I made some adjustments where we lived, and I put up some fencing, and I created a garden. Well, when I would get home from work with the garden out there, instead of going into the house, I would go out into the garden. Now, here's the thing, and I remember this like it happened yesterday. I had a mid-management level job, so it was stressful, and I usually go in early, spend the whole day there, and kind of come back tired and all wound up. This one day was one of those, all wound up. So I got out of the car, walked over to the garden, and just kind of walking around, and I see a weed or two. I bend down to pull the weed, and I have to tell you, it was like that weed was a conduit for the stress just to drain out of my body. It was amazing. As soon as I touched that weed, or touched the ground and all, the stress just disappeared. It was just so incredible that I sat down. There was a bench out there. I sat down and kind of relaxed a few minutes before going in. But then I started doing it on a fairly regular basis. And I've got to tell you, if anybody could just have that kind of a place, whether it's a garden or a little, sanctuary, could be a couple of bird feeders set up outside, and you just put a bench out there. And it's before going into the house, just take a walk out there and spend 5, 10, 15 minutes out there. You will be a totally different person when you walk out of that and walk back into the house, or walk into the house for the first time instead of going from car directly to the house. It is amazing. And I would encourage anybody to try that for themselves.
Yeah, Yeah, that's definitely a very, very excellent way to de-stress with nature. But I'm going to go a step higher and say that there are times, and perhaps this is one of those times for humanity right now, because what we're going through is pretty global. There's in so many countries with the COVID, the lockdowns, the fear, the anxiety. And nature is great, and it will help. But at times, even the beauty, the peacefulness, the serenity, the tranquility of nature is not enough. And there, God is showing us when nature is not enough, God is showing us that we need more. We need the super nature, the supernatural. We need to really, and there is where all of our attention, if we, the hardest work, the hardest, most strenuous, most difficult, most excruciating, most complicated, most, what is that word? Most exerting work that we can do is prayer. I'm going to say that because it seems like, prayer is boring. It's so easy. You sit down, you say some words. Well, if that's what you think prayer is, then it is easy and it is boring. But that's not what true prayer is. True prayer is having a relationship, a discussion, a conversation, being in the presence of our Lord or Our Lady or both or other saints or the Holy Spirit or God the Father. And everybody knows that being in the presence of somebody you really love, that you really admire, who's really calling you to be a better person, is a very intense and draining conversation. It relaxes you, and it's exerting both at the same time. It inspires you, and it overwhelms you both at the same time. So above nature, and nature is a beautiful way. It's a natural way. It's God's way. God gave us nature to give us the rhythm of life, to give us, to help us to understand. I mean, just to help us appreciate the beauty, the system, the organized, just the symmetry of everything in nature, the beauty of it all, the magnificence of it all. I mean, so many Psalms speak of the glory of God is in nature. The heavens themselves give praise to God by their beauty and immensity. The sunsets, the sunrises, the stars, planets. Nature is beautiful. And by the way, I saw what I believe is a little baby praying mantis on my driveway today, just to say that, the stars are great, but even the smallest creatures are just so beautiful and magnificent.
I saw not a baby praying mantis. It's amazing you brought that up. When was it? 3 days ago. It was on a tree, a sapling, and it was an adult praying mantis. And I think it's the first one I've seen in probably a few years. But it was there a few days ago. So I don't know. Maybe what's this deal with the praying mantises? Is it?
Yeah, we need to pray more.
I guess, huh? I mean. I didn't expect to be bringing up that today, but look, we're both talking about it.
And actually, I saw an adult praying mantis a couple of times, not today, yesterday and the day before, which is why I really think this is a baby one. It looks so much similar, except it's all green and much smaller. But I thought it was a leaf. You know how, like, right now it's fall and there's a lot of brown and green leaves on the ground, with tinges of green. And this one, and the adult praying mantis, I really thought it was a leaf with some, bits of green in it.
Yeah. Oh, I just happened to be close up. Otherwise, I would have missed it. Who knows? Yeah. There could have been others out there. But, Hey, as you were speaking before, I was thinking what you just described is really a two-step process, and the natural and then the supernatural. And I think going to this place, whether it's a garden or just a quiet place, what that does is that's the first step which relieves the stress, opens the mind, and then the second step, you can take it into the supernatural. To me, one segues into the other, and that seems to be my experience at the barn. You come down and, you get into it, and the next thing next thing I know, I'm thinking about things that are way beyond what I would have a conversation with most people. But I had to go through the first step to get to the second step. I had to go through the natural to get to the supernatural. Does that make sense to you in any way?
Absolutely. I agree totally. Yeah. There's a book that I haven't read yet, but just the title itself is so intriguing. It's called Leisure, the Basis of Culture. And I don't know how to pronounce the author's name properly. It seems like it's Joseph, but there's an F at the end, and his last name seems German, so maybe it's Joseph Pieper. It's really to have philosophy, to have anything higher than this ordinary material existence, you need to have leisure. You need to have that relax, that tranquility, that serenity. So relaxation is not to hurry and scurry from one vacation or one amusement to another. That is not leisure. That is distraction, which, maybe it's necessary a time here and there. But leisure, relaxation, recreation, what the religious brothers, monks, nuns, sisters do. Recreation is to recreate, is to recreate your energy, your strength. It is not to dissipate it further, so that when you're done with your quote unquote modern relax, which is really distraction and hurry scurry, then when you have to face your ordinary job again after that week of vacation, hurry scurry, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't stand it. I have to go back to work. That's not what recreation is for. Recreation is to relax you, to bring you to, now I have renewed strength, a renewed commitment to do my work well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. I don't think that's a good way to live. I'm talking about working, burning the candle at both ends, working a lot just so that you can have some time off. I've talked to people, this was many years ago when I worked at companies, and the person, a few of them told me that they were working a lot of hours and that they couldn't wait to retire, and then they were going to do what they wanted to do and all of this. But in the meantime, they were kind of, I think, maybe jeopardizing their health a little bit because it was all work, no leisure, no relaxation, but yet they were going to play catch-up when they retired. Well, then I read somewhere that what happens in a case like that, you never get to retirement because you don't relax every day to balance out your life. It's all work. So before you get to the magic number when you can retire, you've had a heart attack and died. Or sometimes if people don't really have something to do, they're just looking forward to not going to work, but they don't really have any hobbies or something they can do, they don't live long after that. They become miserable. Or
return to work. A lot of them go back to work.
Yeah, because that's what happens. As bad as work was, once they got a taste of what not going to work every day and just getting bored, they do something else like going back to work. But my point is this: I don't think we're meant to do it that way. To work for so many years, decades, and then to enjoy everything, all work and then all enjoy it. No, it should be balanced. It should be work and leisure, relaxation every day, so that we do, get into the golden years in good health. And then we may not go to work the way we did before, but we can certainly do things that are positive and worthwhile, volunteer work or something like that. It's just a better way to use our time here that's not only healthier for us, but I think mentally and for the world, it's far more positive.
Yeah. I don't think that God wants anybody to, quote unquote, retire until they die. That's when we retire. That's when we, because what is our purpose here on earth? Is it to work, like you were saying, work for decades and then retire for, if you're 65, and you live till 90, that's 25 years that you do no work. And you might be quite capable for 15 or 20 or even all 25 of those years. No. God, what is our purpose here on earth? So our purpose here on earth is to know, love, and serve God. And we never, ever stop loving Him, growing to know Him, growing to love Him, growing to know Him, and serving Him by serving those in our lives.
Yeah, and I think this concept of vacation and retirement, those are somewhat man-made, or they are man-made to serve us without taking into account what you just said. Why are we really here? We should always be busy doing something that is positive, contributing to the overall good, and it'll vary depending on where we are, our age and where we are with our families. There are times when we have to, our maybe greatest calling is to take care of our family, but once the kids are out of the house, we can shift our focus to something else, Maybe having a good nest egg allows you a lot of mobility and a lot of time that you can devote to evangelizing. It seems like to me, and I've seen these people, they had very good careers and they're financially well off, but as soon as they figured that part out, they made a major change, and now they are in some of the best evangelizers out there. They've taken on all new projects that are trying to get the word of God out.
Yeah. And you were mentioning that about vacation and retirement. Well, God Himself gives man vacation. We have the Lord's Day. We have Sunday, the day of rest. Trouble is, nowadays, even Sunday is a day of distraction, football, and I'm not too much putting down people as football lovers, but football, distraction, sports, or what is it with Sunday too? You go shopping, you go do all kinds of things, you work, Sunday is no longer the Lord's Day, and everybody's exhausted. Sunday is no longer a day of rest from the common, ordinary things of the week, and spend it either to refresh your own soul quietly in nature or with other people to refresh and encourage them and to be encouraged and refreshed by them.
Yeah. I can recall as a kid growing up, it was just a great childhood. It was spent with the stores were closed back then. Blue laws were in effect, and it was spent with family. And we'd go to church, and we either leave from church and go visit relatives, or we'd come home, and it wasn't long until people showed up at our place. The food, the conversation, the laughter. It was just such a wonderful time. As a kid, I just didn't realize how special it was and what it takes to create that kind of an environment. It's not something that just happens. It's something that the adults at the time had to make it happen. And today we're not making it happen that way, at least not the way, I don't think, not to the level or as many families do that as used to. Again, when the stores aren't closed, that's one distraction that's gone. You didn't have as much to watch on TV and all the computer and phones and tablets and all of that. What did you do? You spent time with family. The kids played together. The adults had good conversation. I can remember hearing laughter coming from the house, from the adults telling stories, and it was just such a wonderful time. I took for granted, but once again, it had to be planned that way, because it doesn't happen on its own if distractions are available.
Yeah. What I can really say about what you were saying about family and stuff, I understand that, but I don't think it was always such a positive. And I don't mean like dysfunction or anything like that. I'm talking about when the family is very functional, sometimes that can be an impediment to searching for God, because people can be happy enough. They don't feel the need for God. They have their parents and their siblings and their cousins and their aunts and uncles and maybe some grandparents, and all this is this beautiful, big, happy family. I've actually seen this. And I've actually thought of myself, too, because I have a very extended family, and it's not just family. It's like the whole town is one big family in my hometown, my birth town in Italy. And I've pondered it. I thought, if I had always stayed there and had never come to America, had never immigrated to America, I really think that I would not have searched for God with such longing, because I would have been like, well, I got just about everything I need here on earth. I have friends. And then also, you know what the distractions are too? Now it's one person's a day of success. It's their either birthday, or actually in Italy we did more name days, or it's this feast day, or it's this. There were distractions in different ways at the time too. Now this neighbor's coming by that needs this. You can become distracted from one thing or another quite easily even then, and because life was more full and more human, more close to people and nature, instead of being technology and isolation, you were part of a family, a unit, a community. It was also an obstacle, an impediment to really searching for God, because I could have been under the illusion, like, really, things are going pretty well, maybe something's not quite right in this situation, but this is good and that's good, and I have people to talk to, and I have a family, and there's always something going on. So there's, God is always calling us in one way or another, and there's nothing on earth that can really satisfy, nothing at all, but we can be lulled into believing that distractions and money and vacations can satisfy us, or that community. And remember, even loving your spouse, your parents, your siblings, your children too much is a sin. Love in and of itself is what God is, and that's what we're called to do. But if we love anything or anybody more than God, we are sitting gravely.
Yes, Maria, you've mentioned this before. I can recall at least one other show where you brought the topic came around to this, and you brought that up. What I would have to put some conditions on what I said earlier. In my family, fortunately, we were all mass goers. And when I say my family, I don't mean but also the extended family, the relatives. We all were Catholic. We all went to mass, and so there was that religious or the faith part that was there, as opposed to, like you were saying, you can have so much family time that's considered, we look at it and say, well, that's really good. But if it's taking away from your faith and your time you should be spending in prayer, or it's first and not second, then, or third, then that's the wrong priority. What I was saying earlier kind of implied that God was already in the right place. And my wife and I had this discussion just yesterday, I think, that for people to really have their life together, the priority is God first, your role in the family as either husband, father, or wife, mother, second, taking care of the family, and then you third. If some people put themselves first in number one, and God falls below that, or they could put their family as number one, like you were saying. And that's the wrong priority as well, because if God is second or third, or maybe God's not even thought of, then that's the wrong priority. God has to be first in anyone's life. And then our role as, whether we're male or female, as husband, father, mother, wife, mother, or if we choose to be single, whatever we choose, and then ourselves last. I think if people will do that on an individual basis, then the whole family works. So when you do get together, yes, you're having that great time I was describing earlier, but it's not a distraction the way it would be if you didn't have God placed at number one. That's kind of what I was, that was kind of assumed when I was talking about my family, my childhood earlier.
Yeah. I understood that. I actually, I didn't think that they weren't religious. But what I've seen, at least even going back in time to when my mother was a child, is that religion was very much the church. The Catholic Church was very much a part of nearly everybody's life back in this smallish city town in southern Italy. But that's not enough. At least nowadays, it certainly is not enough. God is really calling us to have more than, really for many people, it was still an outward, external thing. It wasn't something that reached to their very depths. It wasn't something, and this is really what God, our religion, is all about, is the interior life. It's, the exterior things are good, and of course, even in our Lord's time, hundreds of years ago, 2,000 years ago, the ones who did everything right externally were the ones that our Lord condemned the harshest. So what I'm saying is, and I'm not saying anything about anybody in particular, I'm saying generally speaking, when people feel that they have no choice but to go along, the reason I say that too is because when my mother was young, just about everybody, every relative I have, just about everybody in the town was Catholic. But when those rules started loosening, right now you have, and you know this because everybody knows that Europe is really, really, really going down as far as practicing Catholics, practicing Christians so much. Really, Christianity is dying in Europe at a very fast rate. If you look at graphs, it's the only country in North America where we are. It's not dying. It's not growing rapidly, but it's also not dying. I think it's growing slowly, and I think a lot of that could be the immigrants, especially the Hispanic ones, the Mexicans, but also from other Hispanic countries. And so Christianity and Catholicism are still growing in North America, and they're growing slightly in Asia. But the continent that I saw where it's really seems to be growing exponentially, really just going straight up, is Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with Europe. They're just they're in great decline, and which is too bad because I guess in the early days that's where evangelization took place, right? It went from the east to the west, and some of the great cathedrals and some of our greatest saints were the ones that lived there. And to see it in decline, and I think, didn't you tell me once before that even in Italy, it's nowhere near what it used to be.
Oh, not at all. And that's really what the point I was saying, that even though your relatives, my relatives, so many people in so many places did practice the Catholic faith at a certain time period, It was more because they felt they could do no other and still be part of the family and still be part of the community. I mean, if you had an aunt or an uncle, or if your mother and father, let's put it even past more generation, had those that were not going to Mass, it would be a scandal. And they would be, like, what's going on? What's the matter? They wouldn't be as, respected, respectable. And I've seen this happen in my town, that so many people during my mother's generation were all Catholics, all got married in the Catholic Church. Nobody got divorced. If there were marriages that didn't work out, the husband usually would leave, but the woman never remarried or ever went on a date again. She was still married in the eyes of the church, and she took that very seriously. So all these didn't happen. But was it out of freely chosen decision? Was it out of free will? Was it a free choice, or was it coerced? Because if you don't do like the majority, like the people, in the town, like everybody else is doing, you're going to be ostracized. You're going to be a scandal to everybody else. So what I'm saying is, now that I've seen the rules really loosening up and people are more free to do as they wish, I have seen that the young people, there's very few that go out of my relatives, younger than me. There are very, I'm trying to think if there's any of them that actually attend Mass regularly, are real practicing Catholics that attend Mass every Sunday, let alone, do extra things. There's a few my age, but a few. The vast majority do not.
Yeah, I think what's happening, and I'm talking more of my own current family, not my childhood, was sometimes if we're getting together for one of the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, whatever, Easter, that there will be, people coming in. We may go to one of my son's house, and so we'll go, and there'll be other people coming in from other parts of the state, and other members of the family. But my son will always say, "Hey, no politics and no religion. We don't talk that."
Yeah.
Here. And I got to tell you, Maria, I think that is a real problem. Now, what's happened
I agree totally with you.
Yeah, what's happened in the past, you get some hothead who goes off, and I don't know, maybe way in the past, I may have been a little loud on one or two occasions. My wife would probably be rolling her eyes about now if she were here. But anyhow, my attitude today is we should have conversations every day with everybody. And when we get together for these holidays, the relatives and all of that, we should have polite conversation about politics and religion. And personally, if I had to pick one of the two, it would be religion.
Of course.
Because by having polite conversation, I think you can get people to start to consider some of the things we've talked about today and on past shows. Without that conversation, it's just never going to happen. Never is a strong word, but I think it's probably a pretty appropriate word. I think we should have conversations that go into why do you believe what you believe. This is what I've learned, and this is my experience. And by sharing this, it could cause, I think, people who may not be as religious, they may start to think. But unless they get that spark or something, that seed is planted at some point, they're on their merry way. They're just like what you said earlier. They're content. Everything's going well. Job's going well. I got enough of what I need. What time's the game up? Got to go. It's that kind of a thing. I don't know. Does that strike you?
Oh, absolutely. 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 When you were saying the last few sentences that you said, it reminded me of St. Faustina, who had the vision of these people on this wide road, singing and dancing and not paying attention and just merrily going away, and that's not the way to live. That's the wide road. And in St. Faustina's vision, they don't even notice that they're coming to the edge of a cliff and they fall off because, you need to be concerned about what life is all about. You need to be concerned because your life at present depends on it and your eternity depends on it. And this is when you were young, did you hear the adults talking a lot about religion? Maybe a little bit. I didn't hear this. And this is where I'm saying, the family, which is so important, the community, so important. And yet it has to be one that is centered on God, in which the adults speak to one another about God, and when dealing with their problems, put God first. Put God first, in the middle, and last. And so you deal with the problems in a practical way. I mean, obviously, there are people too who, are just like, oh, God will provide, and you don't do anything. No, that's not the way it works. God, what is it? Even with, even with genius. What is genius? It's 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. With solving problems, we have to do, as human beings, we have to use everything God has given to us, our intelligence, our strength, our hands, everything to fix our own problems without getting anxious, without getting, all frazzled about it. We do what we can, and then we say, it's God's work, but we've done our part. So it's both. But we have to do our part, knowing that really our part, no matter how hard we work at it, without God's part, is gonna fail. It's gonna be worthless. But also knowing that without our part, God is not going to act. He's a good parent, the best parent. A good parent doesn't do everything for their children. A good parent lets even their very young or even their handicapped child do as much as they can for themselves, and then helps them.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree with you. There should be the kids should be as they. Well, again, going back to how it worked for me, we'd come in the house after playing to get something to drink or get a snack or whatever, and we could hear the adults talking. And sometimes, believe it or not, I would just sit and listen because they were interesting to listen to. Not so much these days because of all the distractions that kids have. Everything to them is boring. But for me, listening to the adults, that was really good. I enjoyed that. But getting to your point, if they were talking more about God and religion during those times, again, a balance between several things, a little work, maybe a little bit about current events, maybe a little sport, but also about their faith. And I think it would be very easy when you got maybe 6-8 adults in a group talking in a living room for religion and faith to come up several times during the conversation. And if the kids were there, guess what? That would rub off. And that's what really needs to happen. And to me, that's that way of, having that great family life, but also having it in the right priority. As you grow up, I can remember either my parents or sometimes it was an aunt and an uncle, anybody, any adult was in authority when I was growing up. Okay, you paid attention to them, you respected them. And, they look at me, okay, hey, David, I want you to remember this. Don't forget it. It's important. God first, then you, when you become an adult, you be a good husband and a good father, and then yourself last. You remember that, okay? I could see that happening in certain families, and the kid walking away thinking, okay, I've heard it. That's not the first time I've heard it. Not going to be the last. I remember that. And that is something they will take into their young adulthood, and it'll serve them well forever.
Yeah. You said listening to all that you said about listening to adults. Trouble is nowadays, so many children don't respect adults.
Yeah.
Don't think adults are worth listening to, like you said. But the fact is that not only did you like listening to them, it's crucial because you see, young people, adolescents are going to children, even just young children of 2, 3, 5, 10, 9, whatever, but including adolescents, are going to grow to be adults. They're not going to grow up to be foolish comedians on some kind of comedy or some kind of, video game. They're not going to do that. So they're not even doing the work that they should be doing, which is listening to adults around them. But then on the other hand, Dave, so many adults nowadays act like immature or foolish children, because what are they talking about? Sports. And my thing with sports is I think that sports are great as a game, and I personally even like to play. I'm not that athletic, but I love going on a bike. I love going swimming, and I actually like playing basketball. And I've played with all my children, especially my boys. And so ice skating, roller skating, all these kinds of physical activity. I love kickball, baseball. I mean, all these things are fine, but they are games, and they're great games, but they're games. They are not things to be held up as this high ideal, which is very much, especially in American culture and other advanced nations too. It's like athletes, celebrities, singers, musicians, they're held up so high as heroes. And maybe they are. A few of them maybe can be heroic. But look at the character of a person, not their external glitz or glamour or their money or their fame. Look at the character, and we've lost that. We've lost that young people admire those of character, those of service. This priest, and I might have said this too on the show, this priest at the cathedral near us, he said he goes into the 8th grade class and he asks them every year, he asks them what they want to be when they grow up. And he's 80 years old now, the priest, and the Monsignor. And he has been going to classes for a long, long time. And he said he used to go to classes, people would say, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, et cetera, all things which were very much, to a certain level within their reach, and were of service to other people. A doctor heals, a teacher teaches, a fireman saves, policeman helps, all these things. But now he says, I go, and what do they want to be? A musician, a rock star, a singer, a celebrity, an actress, an athlete, and not just an athlete that, has like a coach that teaches other kids. No, they want to be one of the ones that makes, an enormous amount, an exorbitant amount. Yeah. A foolish amount of money, And so anyway, this is the way it's gone. It's like adults don't know how to be mature themselves. How can they teach children to be mature? Children realize, they sense it, they see it, they hear it, that adults are not being mature. Adults are looking how to make more money, or how to, get away with it, not paying this tax or not doing that, how to get the best deal. And up to a certain point, that's okay, but only up to a certain point. If you spend hours of your day trying to get the best deals or trying to, get one over on somebody legally, finding loopholes and things like that, the children are going to hear that. They're going to see what's important to you. What's important to you is that, oh my goodness, you're going to miss a game because you have to do the stupid thing or, whatever. The children will see what is important to you. What is your God? They will see that.
Yeah, and there's a phrase, as you were starting to talk about this, you've heard this before. Don't get me started on that, because you just touched a raw nerve. No, I agree with you. I've seen what I would consider the role of parents. It's slipped away. It's big kids now with little kids. I hate to say it that way, but maybe as an older person, that's kind of what it is. And that's what you said it was. It was just sometimes the parents aren't mature themselves, and the kids pick up on that. So it's just big kids raising little kids. it's sad because it has a major impact on everything, on society. I think it's a source of a lot of problems, and then once the problem shows up, people are lost about how to deal with it. Whereas the person, I got to tell you, I think there are families, because I think I see them walk into church. I don't know them personally, but I think there are families still that everything you said the way it should be, I think it's pretty much that way at that house. The kids are very respectful. They just, you can see them at even a young age reciting the prayers during the Mass. So they've learned them at home. So there is hope out there, but the problem is it's the numbers game. I think the numbers are probably going in the wrong direction. If we could turn it around somehow, then what we thought of as problems 50 years ago, those problems would start to go away, and we would all be better off. I mean, once again, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but you're absolutely right. I know what you're saying. I've seen it myself, and it's a sad thing. It's a sad day, but hopefully with this new evangelization, with maybe the numbers holding in North America, maybe we can turn things around. I do think there is some very positive things going on in Catholicism. It's just a matter of, it catching on fire with enough people.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, things do seem in a way pretty grim in the Catholic Church and also in our nation. It seems pretty grim, but I agree with you totally. There is a lot of hope. There is a lot going on. There's a lot that I really sense it. There is so much that I've seen, so many glimpses here and there, and just the general sense that God is at work. God's mighty, yes, and he will show us. So there's no reason to ever, ever despair, because God is greater than no matter what is going on. Were things to be 10 times worse, God is 1,000,000 times greater. But we've reached pretty much the end. It's been such a wonderful conversation. I have one last thing I want to say, and then if you have a few last things to say, that would be great, and we can end there. The one last thing that I want to say is that going back to what you were saying about the natural and the supernatural, and it reminded me of a verse, about a biblical verse that I couldn't really remember exactly, but then I looked it up, and this is what it is. It's from 1 Corinthians, I think it is. Let me see. Yeah, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 46, and it's exactly what you were saying. But it is not the spiritual which is first, but the natural, and then the spiritual.
Whoa. There you go. There you go. You just made my day. So, okay, we'll think of that as my contribution today instead of that horse joke. How's that?
How about both, the natural and the supernatural?
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That'll be my contribution today. Is that right there? That part and what you just read, and that horse joke that I started the show with earlier, we'll just let that go by the wayside. How's that?
I think the horse joke can stay. I think that's the natural part.
Okay. Oh, I see. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, I get you now. Okay. I'm with you. That's fine. Okay, that works. I'm glad you read that. That's very good. And, boy, I tell you, it's the roadmap is there. It's just a matter of pulling it out and reading it, and which is exactly what we've been saying all along here for the last hour. So, okay, Maria. Then if we're all set, let's close with a prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen. Take care, Maria. Have a great week.
You too, Dave. Bye-bye. God bless everybody.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
To a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.